Snow fell softly across the broken land, covering the scars of war that had spread far beyond the battlefield. Trees stood like silent watchers. Burnt machines, twisted metal, and cracked armor pieces poked through the snow like bones in a shallow grave. The war had come fast. No one had expected it. Not the humans. Not even the aliens who started it. In the middle of this frozen silence, a dog moved quickly but carefully. His name was Braun, a German shepherd bred for search and rescue. His body was strong, but it was his nose that led the way now. He stopped, lifted his head, and sniffed again. Something wasn't right. Something was bleeding. Braun was trained to alert his human if he found a wounded soldier friend or enemy didn't matter. He had been taught to find life where others thought only death remained. He barked once, low and sharp. From behind a fallen shuttle, a man stepped out. Dressed in dirty winter gear, with a patch on his shoulder that marked him as human militia, he followed the dog's signal. His name was Callan Hart, a former Special Forces soldier who now lived far away from the fighting. At least he had tried to, until the war found everyone. Braun barked again, louder this time. He had stopped beside a broken tree trunk, snow piled around the base. As Callan reached his dog, he saw what Braun had found. At first, he thought it was a body. The figure lay still, half covered by snow. Its skin was gray-blue, like ash and ice mixed together. 4 fingers on one hand were stretched out, bleeding slowly into the snow. The armor it wore was cracked, strange, and alien. Callan knelt and pulled the snow away gently. A soft groan escaped the figure's lips. Alive. He stared at her, because yes, it was female. Humanoid but not human. Her face had a smooth structure, eyes closed, hair like thin silver threads sticking to her cheek. Her breathing was weak. She wasn't just injured, she was dying. Braun sat beside her, ears perked up but calm. He didn't growl. Didn't bark. Again, the alien woman opened her eyes a crack. Pale blue, like frost. She looked at the dog first, then at Callan. Her lips moved, trying to speak. No words came. Callan looked around quickly. No drones. No other soldiers. Just him, the dog, and this dying alien. He should have left her. This species, these invaders had dropped plasma strikes on entire human cities just days ago. Her kind had killed thousands, but something in her eyes stopped him. There was no hate there, only pain, only fear. Braun, he muttered, and the dog stood. Help me. Callan slid his arms under the alien's light body. She winced but made no sound. She was colder than the snow around her. As he lifted her, Callan felt her blood on his hands, not red. It shimmered faintly purple. She was too light for someone her size. Maybe her bones were different. Maybe she hadn't eaten in days. He didn't know. But something told him she hadn't been a threat. Not here. Not now. He carried her back to the hidden cabin, a small place tucked into the trees, long abandoned before he arrived weeks ago. As he entered, Braun stayed close behind, watching everything. Callan laid the alien on a mattress and quickly lit a heater. He didn't have medical supplies made for aliens, but he had gauze, clean water, and the will to keep her alive for some reason he didn't fully understand. He cleaned her wounds carefully. Her skin twitched when he touched the worst parts, but still, she never cried out. Her breathing was thin and broken, but she kept her eyes on him. You're lucky he found you, Callan whispered, nodding toward Braun. I wouldn't have come out if not for him. Her eyes slowly moved toward the dog. The faintest curve touched her lips. Was that a smile? Hours passed and she drifted in and out of consciousness. She tried to speak again, but her voice was too weak. Callan gave her warm broth through a tube and watched her eat, slow but steady. She had the will to live. He saw that clearly now. Outside, the wind picked up, and strange lights moved across the cloud, signs that alien ships were still in orbit. Somewhere up there, Her people were either planning another strike or retreating. No one knew which, but down here, in this cabin deep in the snow-covered woods, an alien soldier was breathing under the care of a human man and his loyal dog. What made it stranger was how calm the dog remained. Bron, trained to sense danger, didn't see her as a threat. Callan didn't know if that meant anything, or if it meant everything. And as the fire crackled in the stove, and the alien's fingers slowly curled around the blanket he placed on her, he couldn't help but ask himself, was she the enemy? Or was something else going on, something bigger than any war either side understood? He didn't know yet, but he was about to find out. By morning, the storm had grown worse. Snow covered the world in silence, burying broken machines and hiding blood-stained paths. The cold was sharp, the kind that froze skin in seconds. But inside the small cabin, the heat from the fire kept them alive. Callan woke early. He had barely slept. Every few hours he checked the alien woman's breathing. She had survived the night, but just barely. Her skin remained pale, her body shaking under the thick blankets. Her wounds had stopped bleeding, though some had turned a sickly blue-green. Bron stayed close to her side, resting his head on the floor, eyes always half open. He was alert but strangely calm. Every time she stirred, Bron's ears twitched. Callan brought over more warm broth and sat beside the mattress. "You need to eat," he said softly. "It's not poison. I'm not your enemy." She blinked slowly, then gave a small nod. Her lips parted, and this time a whisper came out, soft and rough, like gravel and wind. "VARNARI. Callan frowned. "That your name, or your people?" She coughed weakly, then tried again. "Varnari." Callan nodded. "All right, Varnari. I'm Callan, this is Bron." Her eyes shifted to the dog again. He was still watching her like a guardian, not a hunter. She blinked once, slowly. "Not attack." Callan gave a small smile. "No, he likes you." For a while, they sat in silence. Snow tapped the windows. Wind howled outside like distant cries. Then, Varnari spoke again, more clearly this time. "I crashed." Callan leaned in. "Your ship?" She nodded. "Shot down. Not your people, my own." That made Callan pause. "What do you mean?" "Your own?" She took a shaky breath. "I refused. Order to kill civilians, small village. I refused. Commander said I was traitor, shot me down." Callan sat back, stunned. A soldier like her, an alien, refused to follow orders? That went against every image humans had of the enemy. They were thought to be emotionless, cold, controlled by loyalty or fear. But she had chosen not to kill. Why didn't they just arrest you? She looked at him with tired, knowing eyes. "There is no prison for traitors." Callan didn't know what to say. For a long moment, he just stared at the fire, the flames reflecting in his tired eyes. Finally he stood. "I'll keep you safe for now," he said. "Until you can walk again, then we'll figure it out." He didn't know why he said that. Maybe because she had spared human lives. Maybe because Bron trusted her. Maybe because, in the middle of war, something that felt human, even from an alien, was rare. That afternoon, he wrapped her in blankets and moved her to a proper bed in the side room. It was warmer there, and quieter. He left her a small heater and water. She had enough strength now to drink by herself, but even as she healed, Callan knew something else was coming. He could feel it. That night, as he checked the solar radio for news, static crackled in his ears. Then a signal broke through, an emergency military message. "Warning to all resistance fighters in Zone 9. Unidentified dropship crash detected. Alien escapee may be alive, engage with caution. Orders are shoot on sight." Callan turned off the radio slowly. His jaw tightened. They were looking for her. But how did they know? Was someone tracking her? He walked back to the bedroom. Varnari was asleep. Bron sat beside her again, tail thumping once when he saw Callan. Callan knelt down and looked at her injured arm. The bandages were soaked. She needed better care, something he couldn't give here. And now, there were others out there who might already be coming. He whispered to himself, "What the hell are you, Varnari?" He looked at her face, peaceful, not like a killer, not like someone the galaxy should fear. Then suddenly Bron growled, "Low, sharp." Callan stood up quickly, moved to the window, and peeked out through the frost-covered glass. Lights moving fast. Through the trees, not headlights, not flares. "Search drones." He turned back to Bron and whispered, "We're not alone anymore." He grabbed his rifle, loaded it quietly, and turned off the heater to kill any infrared signals. Then he stood beside the bed and looked down at the alien woman who had nearly died just yesterday. They were hunting her. And he had to decide fast to give her up or protect her. But deep down, Callan already knew what he was going to do. Because once Bron chose to protect someone, Callan followed. Callan moved fast, his mind racing. The drones were close, too close. Their soft hum cut through the wind outside like metal bees, sweeping the forest with cold precision. If they scanned the cabin, they would find the heat signatures. They would find her. And they wouldn't ask questions. He crouched by the bed and whispered, "Varnari, wake up." Her eyes fluttered open, heavy with pain. But she heard him. She tried to speak, but he pressed a finger to her lips. "No time, we have to move." Bron stood by the door, ears pointed, tense and ready. His instincts told him what. Callan already knew. They were running out of time. Callan gently wrapped Varnari in thick winter cloth and tied her arms close to her body with a support sling. She couldn't walk yet, maybe not for another few days. But she was awake, alert, and she understood the danger. Her eyes were wide as she looked toward the window, where faint flickers of light flashed between tree trunks. He grabbed the sled. From the back storage, it had been meant for hauling firewood. Now it would carry her. He placed her on it carefully, wrapping more blankets around her. The moment she was ready, he clipped Bron's harness to the sled ropes. The dog didn't hesitate. He leaned forward, waiting for the command. Callan whispered, "Let's go." They slipped out the back door, the cabin silent once more. The forest was dark, but Callan knew the trails. He had built them himself, dug them into the earth, and hidden them beneath fallen branches. He had never planned to use them this way, but survival didn't care about plans. As they moved, the hum of drones grew louder behind them. Lights darted between the trees, scanning with cold beams. Once or twice, Callan ducked, pulling Varnari down with him under a low ridge or fallen log. The drones passed overhead, silent and uncaring. She clutched the side of the sled, her breath short from pain, but she didn't cry out. Bron pulled with steady strength, never panicking, always listening. After nearly an hour of moving through snow and shadow, Callan spotted the cave entrance. It was a small split in a cliffside, hidden by frozen vines and snow-covered boulders. He cleared the way, guided the sled inside, and quickly covered the entrance again with a camouflage netting. Inside, the air was cold but dry. Safe enough for now. He lit a small heat stone from his survival pack, warming the space just enough to keep her stable. She lay against the stone, skin flushed and damp with sweat. Callan gave her a drink of water, and she took it slowly. Her fingers trembled. "Why? Help me?" she whispered, voice hoarse. He didn't answer right away. He sat beside her, breathing hard from the escape. His eyes stared at the cave wall. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe because you didn't kill innocent people when you had the chance. Or maybe I just couldn't leave you there to die." She looked at him, confused. "Even if I'm enemy?" He turned to face her. "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we're too quick to call each other enemies." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she said something he didn't expect. My people fear yours, Callan frowned. Why? Because humans change everything. You feel too much. Fight too hard. Love too deep. War was supposed to break you. But it didn't. It only made you more dangerous. Callan gave a tired laugh. We've had practice. Varnari's gaze softened. You are not like the others. Before he could answer, Bron growled low again. Callan stood instantly, rifle in hand, and moved to the cave entrance. He peeked through a crack in the covering. A drone hovered in the distance, scanning the area. Then a second one joined it. They were sweeping the cliffs. He backed away from the opening and whispered, "We can't stay here long. They're close." Varnari coughed. "You should run. Leave me. Save yourself." Callan shook his head. "Not happening. You don't understand. If they find me, they won't just kill me. They'll study what I said, why I defected. They'll fear that more than death." Callan lowered his voice. "Are there more like you?" Her eyes welled with something close to sorrow. "Not many, but yes. Some want peace. Some are tired of orders without reason, of killing without meaning." He sat beside her again. "Then maybe we need to survive long enough to tell someone that." Her eyes locked onto his. "Even if no one believes us?" He shrugged. "Someone will, eventually. Someone always does." Bron barked once, short and urgent. Callan rushed to the entrance again and froze. A figure stood outside the cave now, not a drone. A soldier. Human, armed, alone, and looking right at the cave. Asterisk, Callan didn't move. His heart pounded against his ribs as he stared through the narrow crack in the rocks. A human soldier stood just outside the hidden cave entrance, rifle slung across his chest. Boots planted firm in the snow. Helmet visor reflecting the soft glow of a scout drone hovering behind him. He wasn't scanning randomly. He was looking straight at them. Bron stood beside Callan, body tense, fur bristling, but silent. Trained not to bark unless commanded. The dog sensed danger, but also sensed his human's need for silence. Callan leaned back from the crack slowly and whispered, "We've got company. Human. Alone. But he knows we're here." Varnari struggled to sit up. Her arms trembled. "Then go. Take him down before he calls the others." Callan stared at her. "You think I'm just going to shoot another human without knowing why he's here?" "He's here for me," she said through clenched teeth. "That's reason enough." Callan hesitated. War had taught him many things. Trust was not one of them, but doubt, that came easy. He had no proof this soldier meant harm. No proof. He didn't, and out here, hesitation could be the difference between surviving and dying. But Callan wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was something else now. Something more dangerous. He stepped out of the cave. The soldier raised his hands immediately. "Don't shoot. I'm not your enemy." Callan kept his rifle aimed. "Funny, that's what she said too." The man nodded. Slowly, he was young, maybe 23. Snow on his shoulders. Rank patch on his arm. "A medic. I'm Corporal Reeves," he said calmly. "I picked up a scrambled heat trail and a dog print. Been tracking it for a few hours. I was hoping it was you." Callan narrowed his eyes. "Why?" Reeves shifted his stance. "Because the official orders say to kill anything that survived. That alien crash. But not everyone agrees with that order. Some of us still think, still feel." Callan lowered the gun slightly. "What do you want?" Reeves exhaled, breath turning to fog. "I want to help. I've been listening in on. Encrypted alien comes. That female you're hiding, she wasn't just shot down. She was hunted. Her own people called her a risk to the silence. That means she knew something. Something they wanted buried." Callan's face hardened. "Your military intel?" Reeves shook his head. "I'm just a medic who got tired of patching up children burned by plasma bombs." Callan studied him. Truth was hard to fake in weather like this. And he had seen the same dead tired look in his own mirror. The look of someone who had seen too much to keep believing in easy answers. Callan stepped back and gestured. Inside, but slow. Reeves entered the cave, hands still raised. His eyes widened slightly as he saw Varnari curled near the heat stone, pale and weak but conscious. Bron stood beside her like a guardian beast. She's worse than I expected. Reeves murmured via RNAR. I looked up at him. So now you've seen me, will you kill me? Reeves knelt slowly and opened his medpack. If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have brought antibiotics. She blinked in surprise. Callan watched closely. Why are you really here, Reeves? The young man glanced at him. Because there's a quiet split happening inside our ranks. Not just among humans, but across other species too. This war? It's not about survival anymore. It's about control. Silence and fear. Varnari whispered, the High Order fears humans. They think you're a chaos species. Too unpredictable. Too emotional. That's why they must crush. You, Reeves nodded. But chaos spreads, and some of us. Like what it brings. Callan crossed his arms. So what's your plan? Reeves looked up. There's a rebel contact group, human and alien. Neutral zone, near the old hydro tunnel south of here. 2 days travel. They've been gathering people like her. Defectors. Voices the war machine wants quiet. Callan glanced at Varnari. She looked exhausted, but something had changed. In her eyes, a flicker of hope. Or maybe fear of hope. She won't survive 2 days of travel in this condition, Callan said. Reeves opened a sealed tube and began applying a blue salve to her wounded arm. She might, with help. They worked together for the next hour. Bandaging, feeding, checking vitals. Varnari didn't speak much, but she didn't resist. Her trust was small but real. When night fell again, the three of them sat quietly around the heat stone. Outside, the wind screamed through the trees. Drones passed high overhead, but none came close. We leave at dawn, Callan said. Reeves nodded. Varnar. I didn't speak, but Bron did. He walked to her, laid his head gently on her leg, and closed his eyes. It was the clearest sign yet. She wasn't the enemy, not anymore. Dawn broke cold and gray over the frozen forest, painting the snow in shades of silver and sorrow. The wind had died down, but the air remained sharp and unforgiving. Every breath hurt a little. Every step crunched like glass. Callan helped Varnari sit upright while Reeves prepared the sled with thicker padding and thermal wraps. She had more color in her face now, but her body was still too weak to walk. Her wounds were healing, but slowly. Bron waited patiently by the sled, his eyes always watching. He knew they were about to move again. He also knew danger was coming. Callan looked at Reeves. The hydro tunnels, how far? 30 kilometers, maybe more if we take the quiet paths. Too many patrol drones on the main roads. Callan tightened the straps across Varnari's chest. Quiet is better. I don't plan to get scanned again. They set out before the sun could rise too high, using the thickest parts of the forest for cover. The trees were like old soldiers, scarred, silent, and standing guard. Their branches stretched over the path, offering natural protection from aerial sweeps. Reeves led the way, scanning ahead with a handheld sensor that buzzed softly when it detected movement. Callan stayed close behind the sled, rifle ready, eyes never resting. Bron pulled steadily, his breath puffing out in rhythmic clouds, ears twitching at every sound. Varnari lay wrapped in warmth, but her eyes were wide open now, watching the world pass. Her voice came quietly as they moved. You could have left me. Callan didn't turn. I didn't. Why? Still figuring that out. She smiled slightly. You're kind, strange. Tell me something new. They traveled like that for hours, speaking little, thinking much. Reeves kept them off known paths, cutting through icy creeks and over jagged rocks. At one point, they crossed the edge of a burned-out battlefield, black snow, shattered helmets, and weapons half buried in ash. Varnar, I whispered. This is where I stopped fighting. Callan looked at her. You were here? She nodded. The village was just over that hill, the one I refused to strike. Reeves paused. I heard about that. A high command unit ordered the village wiped. Said it was harboring resistance. Fighters. There were no fighters, she said. Only families. Children. The command ship didn't care. Callan said nothing. He didn't have to. They continued on, winding deeper into the forest until the sun dipped behind clouds again, and the cold returned full force. Reeves pointed to a ridge up ahead. There's an old shelter bunker about a kilometer past that hill. We can rest there for a few hours. But as they began to climb the ridge, Bronn stopped. The dog froze. Hackles raised. Eyes locked ahead. Callan moved fast, dropping beside him, rifle ready. What is it, boy? Reeves scanned ahead, and the device let out a sharp ping. Movement. Several signals. Too close. Callan whispered, Cover! They scattered fast. Callan pulled the sled behind a large rock outcrop and crouched beside Varnari. Reeves dove into a snowbank and activated a static jammer to scramble local signals. Then they saw them, 3 armored soldiers. Not human. Tall, thin, moving like insects through the trees. Alien hunters. Varnari's voice trembled. Execution. Squad. They followed the rec signal. Callan gritted his teeth. They're after you. She shook her head. They're not just after me. They're here to erase all evidence. Reeves crawled over and hissed. They've got sensor masks. We need to stay completely still, or we're toast. Bronn didn't move a muscle, eyes trained on Callan for direction. The alien soldiers scanned the area slowly, methodically. They were armed with plasma rods and shoulder-mounted sweepers designed to track residual heat. One stopped just meters from where Varnari lay hidden. Her eyes widened. She looked at Callan, barely breathing. Then the soldier tilted its head, listening. Bronn let out a sharp bark. The soldier turned instantly toward the sound, and Callan fired. The first shot hit the neck joint, and the soldier dropped. The others shouted in a strange clicking tongue, firing back in bursts of white-hot light. Trees exploded. Snow flew. Reeves returned fire from behind a tree, covering Callan as he dragged the sled farther down the ridge. Bronn charged between attackers, drawing fire and dodging expertly. The firefight was short but brutal. When it ended, all 3 alien soldiers lay smoking in the snow. One had tried to self-detonate, but Reeves disabled it in time. Bronn limped slightly, a singe mark on his flank, but he was alive. Callan crouched beside Varnari. You okay? She was shaking, but she nodded. You didn't have to do that. Yes, he said simply. I did. Reeves stood, breathing hard. They'll send more. Callan looked toward the distant ridge where shadows gathered in. The snow, then we keep moving, he said, and they did. The forest changed after the ambush. What had once been cold and quiet now felt tight and suffocating, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. Every shadow looked like a scout. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. But Callan didn't stop. None of them did. Bronn limped slightly, but he still pulled the sled with steady purpose. Reeves scouted ahead, every few minutes checking his sensor and looking back with silent hand signals. Callan stayed near Varnari, his rifle always ready. Watching the flanks and rear. Varnar, I hadn't spoken since the firefight. Her eyes were wide, but distant. Not with fear, but with memory, the kind that stuck and gnawed, deep and invisible. She clutched the side of the sled as though she expected it to fall apart at any second. After several hours of silent travel, they reached the bunker Reeves had mentioned. It was old, probably pre-war, half buried in a hillside and covered in roots and moss. Callan used a crowbar to break the ice covering the steel door. It groaned as it opened, revealing a narrow stairway that descended into darkness. They entered one by one, Bron going first, his nose sniffing cautiously. The shelter was small but intact. 2 rooms, dry, no signs of recent life. Callan activated the backup power cells and managed to get dim yellow lights to flicker on. Reeves took out his medkit again. "Let me check that leg, Bron." The dog obeyed, sitting down beside him. Callan turned to Varnari, who was sitting now on a dusty mattress. He handed her a thermal pack and a protein bar. She took both but didn't eat right away. "You should rest," he said. "I can't," she whispered. "Not yet." Reeves looked up from his work. "We're 12 kilometers from the hydro tunnels. If we move at first light tomorrow, we'll make it by evening. The rebels have a med lab there. She be safe." Callan nodded but kept watching Varnari. "You're thinking about the ones who attacked us." "I know them," she said softly. "Not by name but by purpose. They're bred for silence. They don't ask questions. They erase problems." Reeves frowned. "They acted like this." "Was personal." "It was," she replied. "Because I broke something sacred in their eyes." Callan sat beside her. "What did you break?" She looked at him, and for the first time, her expression cracked. Her voice shook. "I broke loyalty." The bunker went quiet again. "I was trained since childhood to obey the high order," she said. "No emotions, no doubts. Just orders. They trained it into us like programming. But the day I was told to destroy that village, I felt something. A scream inside me. It wouldn't go away." Callan listened without interrupting. "I refused the strike order. I knew what that meant. My ship was disabled mid-flight. They tried to vaporize me with their own plasma cannons. But something went wrong. The system jammed. Instead, I crashed." She looked at her own hands. "When I woke up, your dog was standing over me. I thought he would bite or bark, but he just sat there." Bron wagged his tail once, as if understanding. "That silence was louder than any order I'd ever been given," she whispered. Callan sighed. "You saw something real. Something worth living for. That's not breaking loyalty. That's discovering truth." Reeves stood and joined them. "And that's why they're afraid of you. Not because you defected, but because others might follow." Varnari's eyes filled with tears. "They will kill you for helping me." Callan shook his head. "Maybe, but this world's already drowning and killing, saving you. It's the first thing that's made sense in a long time." Reeves checked the time. "We sleep in shifts. I'll take first watch." They agreed, and Callan wrapped Varnari in another blanket before lying down near the door, rifle at his side. Bron curled up beside him, one eye open, always listening. That night, Callan dreamed of fire and silence, of falling ships and crying children, of standing alone on a battlefield, not knowing who the enemy was anymore. But when he woke, there was warmth on his hand. Varnari had crawled closer in the night, her fingers resting gently against his. Hadn't meant to dot, it just happened. And that simple touch said something words never could. She didn't want to be alone anymore. Neither did he. At sunrise, they packed up and stepped out into the frozen world one last time. The hydro tunnels waited. And with them, the hope that maybe, just maybe, this war hadn't killed everything worth saving. Snow crunched beneath their boots as they pushed forward through the final stretch of forest. The air was sharp, biting at exposed skin, and the cold had turned their breath into steady white clouds. 12 kilometers had never felt so long. Bron led the way again, despite his injury. The loyal dog didn't slow down, didn't complain, he just moved forward, pulling Varnari's sled like he understood how much depended on this journey. Varnari was more alert now, her strength slowly returning. The bruising around her ribs had faded, and her eyes no longer held that dull, glassy look. She watched the trees, the sky, and every shadow, always aware. Reeves walked just ahead, checking the scanner for signs of movement. So far, nothing. No drones, no alien squads. Just silence. Callan stayed close to Varnari, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the trees as he walked. He hadn't slept much, but something kept him going. Something stronger than exhaustion. Maybe it was the fact that, for the first time in years, he had a purpose that didn't involve destruction. Midway through a frozen valley, Reeves raised a hand and stopped. Movement, he whispered. 3 blips. South Ridge, I can't tell if they're drones or scouts. Callan pulled Braun to a halt. The dog dropped low, ears perked. Varnari squinted at the ridge. They won't stop hunting. Reeves muttered, we're too close now to backtrack. Callan looked around. To their left, a frozen ravine stretched into the ground, narrow but passable. To the right, thick trees. The south ridge was exposed. If those scouts moved toward them, they'd be spotted. He made a quick decision. We take the ravine. Stay low, stay quiet. They moved fast, dropping into the trench of frozen rock and ice. The walls blocked them from sight, but also echoed their every movement. Callan carried the sled now, Braun walking beside him. Varnari gritted her teeth, but said nothing. At one bend in the trench, they heard it, a high-pitched whine. A drone. Reeves spun, aimed his pulse gun, and fired just as the drone appeared. The bolt struck the drone's sensor head, and it spun out of the air, crashing with a soft hiss. But it was too late. They know, Reeves said grimly. No one needed to speak. Callan ran harder, ignoring the pain in his legs, the sting of frost in his lungs. The group burst from the end of the ravine just as a distant explosion echoed behind them, reinforcements. Then, through the trees ahead they saw it. A steel hatch, half buried under moss and snow. A tall pipe stretched upward, marked with ancient hazard symbols. The hydro tunnels, Reeves gasped. We made it. Callan ran to the hatch and began turning the frozen wheel. It resisted, then gave way with a groan. Suddenly, a voice barked behind them, inhuman. Callan turned and froze. 4 alien soldiers had emerged from the trees behind them, weapons drawn. One raised a weapon at Braun. VRNAR. I didn't hesitate. She pulled herself from the sled, her legs shaking but holding, and stepped between the soldiers and the dog. Stop! She shouted in her native tongue. Lower your weapons. The soldiers paused. One of them tilted his head. You are marked for death. I am Varnari of the Second Flame, she said, loud and proud. I refused an illegal order. I followed the true code. You disgrace yourselves by hunting me. The soldier hesitated, but then raised his weapon again. You gave aid to the enemy. I am the enemy of silence, she yelled. And they, she pointed at Callan and Reeves, saved my life. Before the soldiers could act, gunfire burst from the tree line beside them. Human and alien rebels stepped from hidden tunnels, cloaked, fast, and armed. In seconds, the hunters were dropped by precision shots. One of the rebel leaders, a human woman with gray hair and a hardened face, stepped forward. Reeves, he saluted. Got your guest. Barely. Her eyes landed on Varnari. We've been waiting for you. Inside the tunnels, warmth and light welcomed them. Varnari was taken gently by rebel medics. Braun was patched up and fed. Callan and Reeves were offered hot food and warm beds. Later, Callan sat with Varnari as a medic checked her pulse. She looked up at him, her eyes softer now. You never gave up, she whispered. He smiled. Neither did you. I don't know what happens now, she admitted. I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm not welcome anywhere. You're welcome here, he said. And with me. Wherever that ends up. Her eyes welled up, and she placed her hand over his. Reeves walked in. Command wants to meet her. They say she could be the key to peace talks. Callan looked at Varnari. Ready to change the galaxy? She took a breath, then nodded. And In the tunnels beneath a war-torn world, something impossible began. Hope.